Hey, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about the basic stats and the core mechanic gameplay of Dislyte. So as you have seen, like in every single game out there, we will always have a stats that applied into every single character or esper in this game that affects their strength and how they're gonna play on the field. So we have here attack, HP, defense, speed, critical rate, critical damage, accuracy, and resist. And before we go into much details, I do want to tell you that every single skill in these games will make use of either attack, HP, or defense stats, and also sometimes they also make use of your speed stats into their core calculation of the skill itself. So like here I already lined up to you all the 4 different characters that make use of different stats, and here we have Clara that will heal her allies according to her maximum HP. So if this number here says that 5% of Clara's maximum HP will become a heal to your allies, that means if your Clara have 50,000 HP, so multiply it by 5%, that means that your Clara will heal exactly 2500 HP to her allies or to her target. And that number is final. There is no other multiplier, there is no other outside interference unless you have this kind of equipment set, which increase your healing efficacy by 30%. So this is very easy to see, calculate, and determine because it uses HP as its core calculation. So the same thing happens to a character that attacks using their HP. Like in here, I have Everett that makes use of his maximum HP to deal damage to his target. So if the skill here says that it use 6% of Everett's maximum HP, if my Everett have 50,000 HP, that means that he will deal exactly 3,000 damage to his target before calculating the enemy's defense stats. And that is really easy. And that is also because HP goes into the tens of thousands of numbers while the other stats goes only on the thousands. And that's why they need to have a lower percentage number to balance the number out. Otherwise, if you use 100% of average maximum HP as damage, you will deal 50,000 damage, and that is broken as hell. Now there are also some other characters, like here we have Asenat, who can heal using her attack stats, and here she will calculate her attack stats multiplied by 80%, and that is how much heal that she will be able to deal to her allies. And also we have Changpu here, but that is going too deep and too detailed into stats, so you can already determine from these stats whether someone can deal a certain number or not. So heal is very straightforward, and attacks that make use of HP stats are also very straightforward. Now it's going to be different for characters that make use of attack and defense stats. Because for attack here, you can see that we have Camille here that make use of 100% of her attack as damage using her first skill. But because we have, look for this example, like Camille have 4,000 attack here, it doesn't mean that she will deal exactly 4,000 damage to her enemies. Because just like any other RPG games out there, they have a multiplier, like a hidden multiplier that you will multiply your attack before being calculated into the final damage. It can be 1 point something, it can be 2 point something, but usually this number is hidden from the players. Now that's why if you see, if you have tried this game, then you can see that some damage can go into tens of thousands and sometimes can go even into 100,000 damage, and that is the multiplier that being calculated when you are attacking using attack or defense. Now this is done to balance out the number that you calculate against the characters that make use of maximum HP as their damage. Now if you see here that the attack make use of 100%, but if I go to a defense character, then it only use 50% of defense while having a little bit of bonus like 30% here from the attack. Some defensive characters make use of like pure defense stats, while some make use of both attack and defense. This is to balance out the advantage of purely investing into defense compared to purely investing into attack stats. Because when you are purely investing into attack stats, you totally neglect the survivability of that Esper. While if you are using an Esper that make use of defense as both their attack and defensive value, that means that you will get double the benefit while increasing the attack of the damage of that Esper, while on top of increasing the survivability of that Esper. So to balance that things out, so that the players don't favorably choose the defensive character, they make the defense stats only translated into damage at a lower percentage compared to the Esper that make use of attack stats. So in the end, all these characters will deal similar amount of damage, except for the one with the maximum HP as their attack stat, like a damage stats, because it doesn't get multiplied by a multiplier. So eventually the attack-based character and defense-based character can deal an even higher number compared to the one with the HP-based number. So now we are going to go into the speed, critical rate, critical damage, accuracy, and resist. And before we go into that, we will go inside the battle here, because if you want to get into more detail, if you want to read all these things, you can already read the battle guide in the settings here. So in this game, they also implement elemental system. And just like any other games that implement elemental systems, they make use of this elemental as another way to balance out their character. So for example, if you have two Espers that do exactly the same thing, dealing the exact same damage and have the exact same utility, they will be different if they have a different element, because you will have a different situation into using each one of them. So if you are fighting against the element that the first character is stronger against, then you will use the first character. Then if you are fighting against enemies that is weak to the second character, then you will choose your second character, even though both of them perform the exact same thing. So just like any other elements out there, this is playing around with the rock, paper, scissors, because we only have 4 elements here: Simmer, Wind, Flow, and Inferno. So Inferno is stronger against Wind, Wind is stronger against Flow, Flow is stronger against Inferno. While Simmer is not advantageous against any elements, but it also doesn't have any disadvantage against any other element. And this is very important, because the AI of this game make use of this element as their main target to attack. Meaning that if an enemy Inferno AI, they will prioritize attacking your Wind Esper if everybody is at full health. So you can already guess at the beginning of the game or the battle who the enemy will attack the most. And it will be only having an exception if some of your character is already low enough that any other attack from any other element will eventually kill that character. Then the AI will sometimes prioritize that target, or sometimes they do not. So enemy AI Wind will attack your Flow Esper, enemy Flow Esper will attack your Inferno, etc, etc. And this enemy Simmer AI will prioritize attacking another Simmer Esper. So if you understand this AI system and how they do this mechanic, then you can already bait your enemy into attacking certain esper. So if you know that the enemy have a strong simmer esper or a very difficult simmer esper, then you do want to bring a tanky simmer esper just to bait the enemy simmer into attacking your tanky simmer esper, so that your other esper will be safe from the attack from that simmer esper. And that is how you play around with the element in this game. And there is also another mechanic implemented into this element, because attackers belonging to a superior elemental class gain a 15% chance to trigger a crit, like 15% more chance to trigger a crit, and 50% chance of triggering elemental wound. So this is important, and elemental boon, we're going to go into that later below here. Attackers belonging to a disadvantaged elemental class suffer a plus 50% chance to miss, and miss in this game is different from any other RPG games out there, because miss doesn't mean that you deal 0 damage to your enemies. In this game, in Dislyte, miss means that you will deal 25% less damage than what you normally do against that target or any other target using your attack stats. So the attack outcomes are judged in the order of miss, crit, and elemental boon. So how do they calculate this? First, you are going to flip a coin and determine whether your attack is miss or not. So if your attack miss, then it will no longer calculate any chance of your critical and elemental wound. You will stop at miss chance and your attack will be considered a miss attack. So that's why a miss percentage chance, a bonus percentage chance of miss here is very, very important, because miss is really strong in this game. When you are investing into your character stats, like any other RPG games out there, you have an option whether you want to invest into your attack stats or you want to invest into your critical damage stats. And in this light, investing into critical damage stats will prove to have a higher final total compared to when you investing into fully an attack stats. Because on the equipment set, an attack equipment set only gives you 30% bonus attack, while a critical damage equipment set gives you 40% bonus critical damage. And also the substats that you get from upgrading your equipment gives you far higher percentage number of critical damage compared to the attack bonus that you get from your equipment substats. And that's why if you invest your character into critical damage, they will perform much better and deal much higher damage compared to those that only make use of attack stats. But there's a risk of this miss chance. That's why miss chance is very important, because when your attack miss, that means every single investment that you put into your critical damage will become totally useless. And because you invest all of your stats into critical damage, that means that you have a very low attack stats to begin with. And so that very low attack stats will be used to calculate your damage, and it will further be reduced by 25% because of the miss attack. Hence, if you want to invest fully into critical damage, you must make sure that your esper that you want to use will only attack the element that they are stronger against. And you don't want to bring that esper against any other element otherwise. Now, the next calculation is for the crit chance. So if you succeed in the miss chance here, the flip of a coin or throw a dice, whatever you call it, you will go into the critical chance. And this will make use of your critical rate. So your critical rate, if you have like 80% critical rate, that means that you have 80% chance into dealing a critical damage. and etc, etc. And if you succeed into the dealing the critical hit, then your damage will be multiplied by your critical damage rating. This is very straightforward. Every single RPG games out there make use of this number. And next, if you fail into the critical check here, you will go into the elemental boon check here. If you succeed in the elemental boon check, which happens more often if you are attacking an element that you are stronger against, then you will get a 30% more damage on your final attack against that enemy. And that is how the system determines, the mechanic determines your damage outcome. So if you, in summary, if you want to only use your Esper to fight against the element that they are stronger against, then you do want to invest more into critical damage. But if you are fighting against an element that you are like weak against, then you do want to invest more into either your attack or defense or your HP stats, depending on the Esper that you are using. Now, we're going next into the status effects, buffs and debuffs. This is important because the next thing that we are going to discuss about is the accuracy and resist, which affects only these things plus dispel and action point manipulation. Now, the green or blue, I don't know what color is this. I'm a little bit colorblind for this one. This is turquoise, but some people call blue, some people call green. So this one is a boon, a beneficial status, a buffs, whatever you want to call it. And the red one is debuffs, negative status, etc. And other than that, we also have a golden frame buff and also a silver frame debuff. So a golden frame means that these buffs or debuffs cannot be removed by any means at all, aside from the mechanic of the skill itself. So this one is not affected by accuracy and resist. The same thing also happens for the silver frame debuff. This one doesn't get affected by any accuracy or resist because it will always going to trigger. And this is important because later on we will understand why a silver frame debuff is considered an advantage when you are like judging whether a character is good or not, because this is like a guaranteed debuff hit, but compared to the golden frame, a silver frame one can be dispelled or removed. So now we are going to the accuracy and resist. So just like the name, accuracy means that it increases the chance of you applying a debuff to your target, and also a dispel and action point manipulation. And all the other things are not affected by accuracy. So your chance of doing a multi-hit, your chance of doing a pursuit attack, your chance of doing an assist attack, your chance of triggering some kind of attack, it doesn't get affected by your accuracy. Only your debuffs application, your dispel, and your action point manipulation will get affected by accuracy and resist. Now, to judge the accuracy and resist, first we need to go to your character's skill. So if the skill says in their skill description, like here, 50% chance of inflicting taunt for 2 turns, that means that the system will first flip a coin for this 50% chance. If you fail in this 50% chance, that means that no matter how much accuracy you have, no matter how much resist the enemy have, you already fail into applying this taunt to your target. But if the skill doesn't have any percentage number in their skill description, like this inflicts bleed on enemies with sear for 2 turns, that means that it has 100% chance to apply if you fulfill the requirement that is written in this skill set. Like for example, for Camille here, if your enemy already have a sear debuff, then means that the bleed will have 100% chance into triggering. So you already succeed into the first checkpoint for a debuff application. Now it will go into the calculation of accuracy and resist. So if the enemy have a lower resist than your accuracy. If their resist minus your accuracy is smaller than 20%, like for example, you have 100% accuracy and the enemy have 0% resist, that means that 0% minus 100%, your enemy have a chance of minus 100% to resist your debuffs. It will go to a minimum of 20% chance for your enemy to block your debuffs. So no matter how much accuracy you have, no matter how low your enemy resist have, they will always have 20% chance into blocking your debuffs, whether it's your dispel, whether it's your debuffs, whether it's your AP manipulation. Every single Esper will have 20% chance minimum to block that particular effect. Now, if you have a higher resist than the enemy's accuracy, like your enemy have a higher resist than your accuracy, then that will be the number of the enemy's block chance to block your debuff into applying to their Esper. So if the enemy have like 80% resist and you have 40% accuracy, that means that the enemy have 40% chance into blocking your debuff. And if this check, if they succeed in this check, that means that they will block your debuff. So now we are going into the next stats, which is the action point, and this is affected by your speed stats. So just like any other games out there, this is a turn-based game, and turn-based game means that every single character or Esper will take turns into doing their action, and to determine who moves first and who moves later, we are going to use the speed stats. And you can see everybody's speed stats and their turn order at the bottom of the screen here. And this is easy to determine. Like for example, if you see Mona here at the very right corner of the AP bar, that means that she is the one that is doing the action right now. And if this is the first turn of the battle, and you know that your Mona have 200 speed, that means that if this Changpu is at like 60% mark of the AP bar, that means that your Changpu have like 60% of those 200 speed, meaning that the Changpu here probably have around like 120 speed or something. And you can already calculate all the other Espers that are in the battle. And that is really important, because once you move, if you have a higher speed, like you will eventually overcome all the other slower Esper, and you have a chance, if you have like extremely high speed compared to some Esper out there, and you probably will move twice or 3 times before that particular Esper move. And to know that, like if you do want to play around with this speed, then just know that if you have a 200 speed Esper and you want to move twice before another Esper of yours wants to move, then that second Esper need to have like only 100, like half of your speed, and like around 14% less than that. So for example, like if you have 200 speed, that means that your second Esper will need to have around 70 or 90 speed in between that. Usually 90 speed is okay. So if it's less than 50% of your speed, that means that you will definitely move twice before that second Esper move. Now, that is something that you can play around. Like for example, if for Esper like Brine will need 1 turn into applying her attack buff first before she can do her damage. And her damage, because her third skill inflict defense down to her target, if you do want to use her twice before your other DPS move, that means that your Brine need to have more than twice the amount of speed of your secondary DPS. And your brain will then move twice before your other DPS move. Now these things all determined by the speed stats of the game here. And just like any other turn-based game out there, for a turn-based game, if you don't get any turn at all, that means that you already lose the game. Because what is the point of you having a strong character or Esper if you don't get any turn to move at all? That's why speed stats is extremely important in this game, but also a control ability like stun, speed down, petrify, freeze, etc., because it makes your enemy lose a turn. And losing a turn in a turn-based game is something that is very, very important, because one turn can change the whole battle outcome. And that's why a skill cooldown is also very important. If you want to judge a character, whether it is useful or not, the amount of turn needed for a skill to be off cooldown can also determine whether this character is very, very strong or very, very niche. Now, the cooldown of skill here can be explained in here. Like you will see the number of the cooldowns on a skill after you already use it, and once the number is like reaching 0, then you can use that skill again. And this cooldown will be reduced after your characters make a move. And that is normal, that is standard. So you can see here like all the explanation. Like I said, our Clara heal for 3800 HP there. So for the next heal, she will definitely going to heal the exact same amount of number again, just like what I said at the beginning of the explanation here. Look at that. So it's very easy to determine the number here, and the way for you to judge every single Esper in the game is to compare their number from the other similar character. Like for example, here I have Everett that deals mostly a damage using his maximum HP. So if you see here that his percentage number is at 5% and then attacks one enemy 3 times, meaning that he can use like 15% of his maximum HP as damage. If you find a new Esper that deal like 20% of their maximum HP, that means that that character will definitely deal more damage than Everett if they have the same basic HP stats. That's just how easy it is to determine whether some Esper is going to be more OP than their predecessor, or it's going to be just so-so, and whether you want to invest on them or not. Now, this is a pure strength character, like meaning that this is only based into attack damage. And just like I said, playing around with buffs and debuffs, it's what determines the game outcome. So buffs and debuffs are really important because it will be able to change a losing battle into a winning one and a winning battle into a losing one, because buffs and debuffs doesn't care about your enemies or your own stat. Like here, a debuff of miss rate up will give your target a plus 50% chance to miss, and like we've already seen, a miss attack is really awful. So whether you have a leveled up Everett or a strong Everett or a weak Everett, he will always reduce or give a plus 50% miss rate to his target. So if you have a character that can apply all these things like buffs and debuffs and doesn't do much damage by themselves, they will always be relevant whether the game has been progressing a lot or it has been like going on for years, or you just started the game. Like it will always be relevant. But for characters that you only judge by the amount of damage that they can deal to their enemies, eventually there will come new updates, there will come newer Esper that can deal even more damage than that character. So if there's already a better Esper that can deal higher damage than your your current Esper, that means that if you don't have any other utility that you can make use of, like here, if you don't think that misread up is going to be important, and Taunt is doesn't really help your allies that much, like it will make your enemies lose a turn by attacking Everett, but that's it. That means that you don't have any value, like extra value at all compared to the newer Esper, and so eventually this character will become obsolete as the game goes on. So that's why if you want to invest, like if you are a free-to-play player or a casual player, you do want to invest into more of like buffs and debuffs character that can deal above average damage compared to an Esper that can deal insane amount of damage and just that, like pure raw power, and that's it. Because eventually those Espers will get replaced by a newer one. So that's how you can play around with the core mechanic of Dislyte. And in the next episode, we are going to talk about every single character in the game. And using everything that you learn in this video, we can then decide whether an Esper is going to be OP or not, whether an Esper is going to be relevant or not, in which case they are going to be strong, in which case they are going to be weak. Everything can be decided from their basic stats, from their percentage skill damage number, from their cooldown of their skill, and their buffs and debuffs. So hope you enjoy this video, hope you learned something from this, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching, bye bye.